Nucleic acids are a high-yield topic on the MCAT, and in order to understand important concepts like transcription and translation and DNA replication and cell division, it's really important that we understand the basic structure of a nucleic acid. And so we're going to start by talking about the building blocks of nucleic acids, or the monomers, which are nucleotides. So nucleotides are the monomers of nucleic acids, which include both DNA and RNA. Nucleotides have three key ingredients. They have a phosphate group. So if we look right here on the diagram, we see a phosphate group right there. And that phosphate is attached to a sugar. So here's our sugar right here. And specifically, the sugar that is found in nucleotides is a ribose sugar. And it can either be deoxyribose or a ribose, depending on if we're talking about DNA or RNA. We're going to talk about that in the next lesson. And also attached to that sugar, we have a nitrogenous base. So here's our nitrogenous base right here. So a phosphate, a sugar, and the base. And both the phosphate and the base are attached to the sugar. So it's important to know the difference between a nucleotide and a nucleoside. So a nucleoside is a sugar attached to a nitrogenous base. So just the sugar and the base. And then a nucleotide is formed when one or more phosphate group is attached to that sugar. So if we look on our diagram here, the sugar and the base, this part, is the nucleoside. And then the molecule we're looking at we know is a nucleotide because you see we have a phosphate group attached right here. In addition to forming our genetic material, nucleotides also have other important roles. So there's certain key molecules that you should definitely be aware of for the MCAT that are nucleotides, and one of those is ATP. So ATP is going to show up a lot. ATP is a nucleotide, and ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. So it is a sugar with an adenosine attached and three phosphate groups. And as we'll see later in the course, ATP is the primary source of chemical energy that's available in the cell. So it's important that you are able to recognize the structure of ATP and know that it's a nucleotide molecule. Other important nucleotides that perform other roles in the cell are cyclic AMP, or CAMP as it's abbreviated, which is a secondary messenger. So it's really important in regulating transcription of certain genes, for example. Other important nucleotides include NADH and FADH2, which we're going to see when we talk about cellular respiration and the electron transport chain. So it's important to keep in mind that these are nucleotide molecules as well. So nucleotides show up a lot on the MCAT, so it's really important that you know their general structure, know the key ingredients, phosphate, sugar, base, be able to recognize nucleotides that would be found in DNA versus RNA, which we're going to talk about in the next lesson, and be able to recognize key nucleic acids, especially ATP.